Well, folks, there's been another school shooting, this time in Madison, Wisconsin. The motive on the shooting is still unclear at this point. The alleged shooter was a 15-year-old girl. This 15-year-old girl, has been a lot of speculation online as to why she committed this particular shooting. There are several people dead, including the shooter. According to the New York Post, the teen girl who fatally shot a student and teacher and left two more pupils clinging to life at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, has now been identified. Apparently, this girl brought a handgun to campus and opened fire around 11 a.m. inside a classroom during study hall. The teenage student and teacher were pronounced dead at the scene. Another teacher and 5 more students were wounded. 2 of the students are in critical condition with life-threatening injuries, according to the Madison police chief, Sean Barnes. Here he was announcing the impact of the shooting.
What we know is that a total of about 7 persons were transported from this scene to area hospitals for treatment. We know that at least 3 people have lost their lives, including a juvenile person. I don't have any other information about those persons who have lost their lives, and I'm not going to release that until we have, of course, spoken with family members and ensuring that they are fully aware of this tragic scene that occurred today.
The shooter apparently had a manifesto. We're not sure whether that manifesto has been locked down. At this point, the police say the motive is still unknown. At this point, again, there's a lot of speculation online about the shooter possibly being trans. Again, that is all speculation at this point. We don't know anything about whether that is true or not. The Madison police chief, Sean Barnes, addressed that idea yesterday.
Chief, there's been a lot of misinformation online, including from prominent Moms for Liberty activists in Wisconsin, claiming that the shooter was transgender, which is a reaction that we see across the country in wake of mass shootings, to claim that trans people are dangerous. Can you respond to that directly in regards to this?
Yeah, I don't know whether Natalie was transgender or not. And quite frankly, I don't think that's even important. I don't think that's important at all. I don't think that whatever happened today has anything to do with how she or he or they may have wanted to identify. And I wish people would kind of leave their own personal biases out of this. We have people who showed up to work today to help kids be better who are not going home. And we have lost members of our community who are children, including the shooter. So whether or not they were transgender is something that may come out later. But for what we're doing right now, today, literally 8 hours after a mass shooting in a school in Madison, it is of no consequence at this time.
You know, it is that last part that is kind of amazing. Hey, not that the information is unavailable as to the quote-unquote gender identity of the female shooter. And it is very rare, obviously, to have female shooters in, pretty much any school shooting related scenario. There have been a spate of transgender shooters in recent years. There was one in Maryland. There was a STEM school shooter in Denver. There was a Club Q shooter in Colorado Springs, Colorado, who self-declared as transgender, and the Covenant School shooter in Nashville, Tennessee. All those people were either transgender or non-binary, self-declared. But the part about this that's amazing, again, I'm not suggesting that the shooter was trans. We have no idea at this point how the shooter identified. The point that's kind of amazing is the police chief's statement that it makes no difference at all, because that is not how these shootings typically go. We know for a fact, for example, that if this shooter had been a 15-year-old white boy who went into, say, a historically black church and shot a bunch of people, the motive would be the number one thing the media were talking about that day. There is a steady application of narrative force to so many of these stories, particularly when it comes to school shootings. And the rule is this: if the school shooting is committed by somebody who can be linked with a sort of right-wing narrative or alleged right-wing narrative, then immediately the problem becomes, quote-unquote, right-wing ideas, right? Even if it's white supremacy, which is not a right-wing idea, even if you want to make that case, okay, that is how it goes. So if you have a school shooting that is racist in nature, then we have to have a nationwide conversation about racism in America, which, of course, is linked to Donald Trump, according to the left. If, however, there is a school shooting that is committed on behalf of a left-wing cause, then the conversation is either about why the left-wing cause is justified or about gun control. Right? That is the way the narrative logic works. We talked about this with regard to the United Healthcare CEO shooter, where the entire media decided it was a perfect time in the aftermath of a terrorist attack on the United Healthcare CEO. That was a perfect time to discuss healthcare. However, when there are shootings that do not mesh with what the left would like, when in fact somebody does violence to children on behalf of an evil cause, then there's no discussion as to how the evil cause might be connected to the shooting. Then we are relegated to discussing gun control again. And that's precisely what is happening here. Immediately, because this was dismissible as a not right-wing narrative connected shooting, you saw everybody in the media immediately rush to gun control, like right away rush to gun control. So Frank Figliuzzi on MSNBC, he says the guns are the issue. Again, it's very predictable how this logic goes.
I don't see significant enough progress. You'll have certain sides saying it's all mental health, and we need to get better at that. And you know what? That's true, but it's not all mental health. We'll have people say we need to lock down schools more and have many armed officers all over a school. There have been numerous cases where there have been armed officers, and they didn't get there fast enough. And so that's not the issue. Guns continue to be the issue, and particularly access to guns from people who should not have them, including criminal actors and young people who should not have access. So until we address all of these issues together and acknowledge the role of guns, we're not going to see significant change.
Again, that is always the logic that is used by the left-wing media. If a shooting happens and it is possible that it's connected to a left-wing narrative, we never make that connection unless we wish to justify the left-wing narrative. If there's a shooting that's connected to a purported right-wing narrative, then immediately the conversation is about right-wing rhetoric or Donald Trump or racism in America or anything else. I'll give you a perfect example. There was a school shooting that happened about 2 weeks ago. You haven't heard about it. No one's heard about it. It got zero national coverage. It was a school shooting at a Christian school in Palermo, California. This school shooting, apparently, 2 kindergarten-age boys, according to the Jerusalem Post, were shot at a Seventh-day Adventist Christian school in California. Why didn't you hear about this story? Right? A man walks into a Christian school and shoots a 5- and a 6-year-old and puts them in critical condition. The gunman was known to have a lengthy criminal record and a mental health history. So this would be a perfect time to talk about, what drove this person, presumably. But there's only one problem. What drove this person, apparently, was hatred of Israel. So that means that there will be no conversation about how the left-wing pro-Hamas cause is connected to actual physical violence. Because the shooter in that particular case claimed to be taking revenge for American involvement with a supposed Gaza genocide as well as attacks on Yemen. The 56-year-old assailant, who was found at the school by first responders with a fatal self-inflicted gunshot wound, had left a statement justifying the shooting as revenge for the ongoing Israeli military operation against Hamas in Gaza and operations to counter Ansar Allah's maritime terrorism and missile attacks in Yemen. That was what was left in the manifesto. You didn't even hear about this shooting. Now, I promise you that if this had been a pro-Israel person who shot up a mosque, for example, God forbid, because that would be an act of tremendous evil, you'd have a lot of talk about the pro-Israel position. The reason I point this out is just to point out how deeply corrupt the media are. And they really are corrupt. The way they generate narratives out of whole cloth and then press those narratives forward is truly an astonishing thing. As another example of this, the Washington Post, after years, is now finally admitting that trans medicine is a giant fail. According to the Washington Post editorial board, they're now pointing out that transgender medicine is largely based on faulty data. Quote, it would be ludicrous to suggest that patients have a civil right to be harmed by ineffective medical interventions. Multiple European health authorities have reviewed the available evidence and concluded it was very low certainty, lacking, and limited by methodological weaknesses. Last week, Britain banned the use of puberty blockers indefinitely due to safety concerns. The uncertainty is the result of scientists' failure to study these treatments slowly and systematically as they develop them. Early studies from a Dutch clinic seem to show promising results, but the research started with only 70 patients and no control group. Treatment results that look impressive in small groups often vanish when larger groups are studied. And this is amazing. This is the Washington Post editorial board after years of suggesting that it is sheer bigotry to suggest that boys cannot become girls, now acknowledging that trans medicine is based on nothingness. That is the Washington Post editorial board. And the lies that will be propagated by the media on behalf of a particular political narrative are almost endless. Truly amazing stuff. And it spans everything. It spans every topic under the sun. The media narrative fight is the fight that defines our politics. And that media narrative fight has been dominated for legitimately decades by a left-wing media that only propagates left-wing narratives. Well, the media are constantly telling lies and passing those off as truths. The truth is, however, that going online without ExpressVPN, that's like putting all your passwords and credit card numbers on a huge billboard for the whole world to see. In today's connected world, we're constantly jumping between networks, grabbing coffee at our local cafe, working from hotels, killing time at airports. Well, many don't realize that these convenient connections can be a playground for cybercriminals. When you browse on these unencrypted networks, your personal information, from passwords to banking details, is vulnerable to anyone with the right tools. And here's the scary part. Gaining access to someone's personal data does not require advanced hacking skills. With some basic equipment that's readily available, even young teenagers could potentially intercept your data. Once stolen, this information is incredibly valuable. Cybercriminals can earn upwards of $1,000 per person by selling personal details on dark web marketplaces. This is where ExpressVPN comes in, creating an encrypted tunnel that shields your online activity from prying eyes. Think of it as a secure private corridor for your data to travel through, protecting you no matter where you connect. Their encryption is so robust, it would take a supercomputer 1 billion years to crack it. Yet despite this fortress-level security, it's remarkably user-friendly. You open the app, tap once, and now you're protected. The peace of mind ExpressVPN gives me every day, unparalleled. Protect your online privacy today. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Get 3 extra months for free with my exclusive link, expressvpn.com/Ben. Also, let's talk about something that actually works: efficient business finance management. You want to know how to run your company's finances smoother than a well-oiled machine? Check out Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. Ramp gives your finance team unprecedented control over company spending. You can issue cards to every employee with actual limits and restrictions, a novel concept in today's world of runaway expenses. Ramp's accounting software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time. No more chasing down receipts. Your employees won't waste hours on expense reports, allowing you to close your books 8 times faster. Unlike most so-called money-saving solutions, Ramp actually puts cash back in your pocket. Businesses using Ramp save an average of 5% in their very first year. Plus, it's easier to set up than my son's Lego sets. You can get started, issue virtual and physical cards, start making payments in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. And now, get $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Shapiro. That's ramp.com/Shapiro. ramp.com/Shapiro. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions do apply. That's ramp.com/Shapiro. Now, the good news is that there are mechanisms for debunking a lot of that stuff now. A perfect example today comes courtesy of CNN. So CNN, actually, Clarissa Ward, a reporter at CNN, she's in Syria. She's going around with her camera crew. And there's a viral clip of Clarissa Ward entering a Syrian prison where she discovers, shock and horror, a man who's been in the prison. And then she frees the man along with her crew. And this man is apparently a supposed victim of the Assad regime, demonstrating full scale how the Assad regime, it's evil, it's horror, and the fact that there are so many members of the Syrian uprising who are heroes and all this. The media are trying to generate a narrative in Syria that the people who are taking over Syria are kind, generous moderates. That is the narrative being pushed by the Biden administration. It's also being pushed, of course, by the other end of the Democratic media human centipede. So here's Clarissa Ward in what was one of the stagiest clips that I've seen on television.
We go in to get a closer look. It's still not clear if there is something under the blanket.
Oh, it moved. Is there someone there? I thought I saw it move. Is someone there? Or is it just a blanket? I don't know.
I think it's someone. Hello?
Okay, it's just
Okay, if you can't see, Clarissa Ward is going into the cell with people, and there's a man under a blanket. And there he is. He emerges from under the blanket. The cell, by the way, is shockingly clean for a place that's supposed to have been occupied by a victim for years.
After 3 months in a windowless cell, he can finally see the sky.
يلا ضوء يلا ضوء يلا
My God, the light, he says. Oh God, there is light. My God, there is light.
Okay.
She's holding his hand. He's sitting down on a chair to talk about his horrifying experiences. Again, this is all part of the narrative buildup in Syria. That the people who are being freed are all wonderful people, and that the rebels who have taken over Syria are all wonderful people, and all the rest of this, when in reality, everyone who's involved, the Assad regime evil, also HTS, which is an offshoot of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, also not moderate. Radical, backed by Turkey, Hamasniks. Okay, so why am I laughing at this clip? Because the person she just freed, along with her CNN crew, was a notorious member of Bashar al-Assad's forces, known to torture those who refused to pay him off, according to a shocking local fact check, according to the New York Post. So basically, this is Kaiser Soze leaving the office of the inspectors in The Usual Suspects. He walks out and he's like, oh, well, it turns out that he's actually the problem, right? The network went viral last week with footage of the startled prisoner being led from the prison by journalist Clarissa Ward, who called it, quote, one of the most extraordinary moments I have witnessed in her 20 years of reporting. However, independent and unbiased fact checkers Verify Sai published a detailed report Sunday saying the seemingly innocent prisoner was actually a person named Salama Mohammed Salama, a first lieutenant in Syrian Air Force intelligence with a long history of alleged war crimes. Oopsies! He gave his name as Adel Khurbal and claimed to have been arrested by government authorities 3 months earlier and said he had no idea the Assad regime had collapsed. However, Verify Sai noted that he appeared, quote, well-groomed, physically healthy, no visible injuries or signs of torture, an incongruous portrayal of someone allegedly held in solitary confinement in the dark for 90 days. He didn't even flinch or blink when looking up at the sky after saying that he had not actually seen sunlight for 3 months. And then they started investigating his identity, and it turns out he killed civilians during the Syrian civil war in 2014. Why do I bring this up? Because our media are both stupid and gullible, and of course politically motivated. The author, Michael Crichton, most famous for books like Jurassic Park and The Andromeda Strain, Michael Crichton had something that he called the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. Here's what he said, quote, briefly stated, the Gell-Mann amnesia effect is as follows. You open the newspaper to an article on some subject you know well. In Murray's case, physics, in mine, show business. You read the article and see the journalist has absolutely no understanding of either the facts or the issues. Often the article is so wrong, it actually presents the story backward, reversing cause and effect. I call these the wet streets cause rain stories. The newspaper's full of them. In any case, you read with exasperation or amusement the multiple errors in a story, and then you turn the page to national or international affairs and read as if the rest of the newspaper was somehow more accurate about Palestine than the baloney you just read. You turn the page and forget what you know. This is the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. I'd point out it does not operate in other arenas of life. In ordinary life, if somebody consistently exaggerates or lies to you, you soon discount everything they say. In court, there is a legal doctrine of falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus, which means untruthful in one part and truthful in all. But when it comes to the media, we believe against evidence. It is probably worth our time to read other parts of the paper, when, in fact, it almost certainly isn't. The only possible explanation for our behavior is amnesia. Yup, that is absolutely correct. And this is why I think so many narratives that are promoted by the left are totally falling apart at this point. Why the media narratives are falling apart. And it's happening globally, by the way. So one of the things that we are watching internationally right now is a wave of conservative victory. It's happening across the world. Some of it is a result of President Trump. Some of it is just part of a wave that includes President Trump. Justin Trudeau is now likely to resign. His liberal government has now crumbled, largely because of a tweet storm from President Trump on Truth Social, mocking Justin Trudeau as the governor of the 51st state, and also suggesting that he's going to tear up the living hell out of Justin Trudeau and Canada if Trudeau does not give in on some trade deals. According to the UK Daily Mail, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau is on the brink of resigning as his liberal government crumbles around him, according to CTV News. Trudeau is considering his options as leaders, sources have told the broadcaster, while his finance minister, a person named Chrystia Freeland, who's a far leftist, revealed that she will quit. She quit on Monday after clashing with Trudeau on issues including how to handle possible U.S. tariffs, dealing a huge blow to an already unpopular government. In a stinging resignation letter, Freeland dismissed Trudeau's push for increased spending as a political gimmick that could hurt Ottawa's ability to deal with the 25% import tariffs President-elect Trump says he will impose. The resignation by Freeland, who also serves as deputy prime minister, is one of the biggest crises Trudeau has faced since taking power in November 2015, and leaves him without a key ally when he is on track to lose the next election to the official opposition Conservatives. Trudeau quickly came under pressure to go from the New Democrats, the smaller opposition party, which earlier this year pulled its unconditional support of the minority Liberal government, but has continued to back the prime minister on some legislation through parliament. The party leader, a person named Jagmeet Singh, said, I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go. Now, this does not mean that there will immediately be a new election. So Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, and who right now would skunk the entire Liberal Party in the next election. I mean, just blow them out of the water by every available polling statistic. So he's looking for a new election. He called on Trudeau to resign, and also he's calling for new elections, which of course he should be, because the left-wing agenda of Justin Trudeau has become unbelievably unpopular in Canada, as well it should.
Mr. Trudeau is being held in office by one man, Jagmeet Singh. A fifth of Liberal MPs have written a letter for him to resign. His deputy prime minister has walked out on him. His housing minister has quit. That on top of numerous other female ministers who stormed out after his appalling mistreatment and abuse and dishonesty towards them. 80% of Canadians have lost confidence in this prime minister. So why is Jagmeet Singh making the entire country wait for him to get his pension? That is the question today.
And the real reason that these other parties aren't voting for a snap election right now is because they're afraid that all of the losses to Trudeau are going to accrue to Poilievre, who, by the way, would be an amazing Prime Minister of Canada. The best since Stephen Harper, maybe better than Stephen Harper, and I'm a big Stephen Harper fan. So right now, the Canadian government is basically on the brink. The only thing that is holding them up, because Canada is a coalitional system, you require a majority of the Canadian Parliament to vote for a motion of no confidence in order to bring down the government. Right now, the Canadian Parliament is split between a wide variety of parties. The largest party is still the Liberal Party, only for the moment, because they haven't had an election in a while. It is also split between that party is split between the Conservative Party, and then there are a couple of other parties as well. There's a Quebecois Party, and there is the Green Party as well, the New Democratic Party. And so those are parties that sit in the Parliament. You need a majority of the people in Parliament to vote for a motion of no confidence. The left-wing parties have been hesitant to call a new election because they are not going to do better in the new election than they already have, and Poilievre will become prime minister with probably a sheer majority of votes in the Parliament at this point. So that is the only thing that is holding Justin Trudeau in office at this point. Again, the reason that he is unpopular is because he has pursued every bad policy it is possible to pursue. In fact, this little rebellion inside his own party is being led by the fact that he wants to spend and spend and spend and spend. He wants to create a massive budget deficit in order to address the fact that he's about to be hit with Donald Trump's tariffs. Chrystia Freeland wrote a letter to Trudeau. It said, quote, "Our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. This means pushing back against America First economic nationalism with a determined effort to fight for capital and investment and the jobs they bring. This means working in good faith and humility with the premiers of the provinces and territories of our great and diverse country and building a true Team Canada response." Freeland, of course, would love to challenge Trudeau for leadership of the Liberal Party, oust him and then take his place. That is probably not going to be the outcome of what happens in Canada. Well, folks, Justin Trudeau's political career may not be long for this world, but let's be real about life. We may not all be here forever, which is why you need life insurance. You know, every holiday season, you spend precious moments together, whether you're lighting the menorah or decorating the tree or just sharing a meal, and the traditions matter. But God forbid something happens to you. What happens to those traditions? Actually, what happens to your family? This is why you need life insurance via Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance super simple. They give your loved ones a financial safety net they can use to cover debts and routine expenses or even invest that money to earn interest over time. Their digital tools let you compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side for free with no hidden fees. Their licensed support team is there to help you get exactly what you need. They answer questions, handle paperwork, advocate for you throughout the entire process. Even if you already have life insurance through work, it might not protect all your family's needs. It probably won't follow you if you leave your job. Join thousands of happy Policy Genius customers who have left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Secure your family tomorrow so you can have peace of mind today. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Also, nobody wants to think about debt, but here's the cold hard truth. Many of us will get deeper in debt during the holidays. Last year, and this is staggering, half of all American consumers took on debt just to pay for the holidays. And here's the thing. It's never too early to start planning your way out. My friends at PDS Debt can help with a personalized solution just for you. Are you making payments every month on your debt and watching your balances stay exactly the same? That ends right now. PDS has solutions specifically designed to help you get out of this cycle. And unlike the government's debt relief programs, everyone with 10 grand or more in eligible debt qualifies. No minimum credit score required. That's right, bad and fair credit accepted. They'll help you save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. I've seen what debt can do to families, especially around the holidays. It's really bad. And it's one of the reasons I trust PDS Debt to help my listeners find real solutions that actually work for them. Start planning today. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Ben. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/Ben. pdsdebt.com/Ben, pdsdebt.com/Ben. Go check them out right now. Start solving your debt problems today with my friends over at pdsdebt.com/Ben. By the way, it's not just happening in Canada. It's also happening in Germany. So Germany is headed to an early election after the embattled German Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote on Monday, according to the Wall Street Journal. That is the first step in a sequence of events that will lead to early elections next year. It is the latest symptom of mounting political instability in Europe. Monday's vote came after the dramatic collapse of Scholz's strife-ridden coalition government last month, which added a political crisis to the economic slump that has gripped the country for the past 2 years. Scholz did not have a majority in parliament. He called a confidence vote in order to clear the way for a dissolution of parliament and a new vote, now expected in February. Germany's post-World War II constitution has a multi-step process for early elections in an attempt to prevent endemic political instability. However, the person who is most likely to take over, if there were to be a new election, is a person named Friedrich Merz. Friedrich Merz is a center-right politician who is very pro-America. Scholz is a center-left politician. Merz is a representative of the same party as Angela Merkel. The difference is that he really hated Angela Merkel's immigration policy, which condemned the center-right in Germany to a decade of wilderness. Merz said, quote, "Mr. Chancellor, you've had your chance. You didn't use that chance." Opinion polls show the center-right Christian Democratic Union, led by Merz, as the likely winner of the ballot on February 23rd. The party is unlikely to command a big enough majority to govern alone or with the FDP, which is the other center-right party, in parliament. It would likely need to form an alliance with one or several center-left parties. The bottom line, however, is that the winds have shifted across the world. The West is tired of stagnation. The West is tired of conciliation with left-wing forces that themselves are conciliatory with radical Islamists. They're tired of this. You're watching the West finally stand up on its hind legs. Some of the leaders of this new movement include people like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, who apparently is going to be attending the inauguration of President Trump. It includes in the United States, obviously, President Trump. It includes in places like the Netherlands, Geert Wilders. It includes Viktor Orban. You're seeing a real move by members of the center-right to libertarian. Javier Milei in Argentina, the leader of Uruguay, Bukele in El Salvador. Right? There's an entire list of leaders who are moving in a similar direction. Why? Because chaos and instability, those things are pleasures of the luxurious wealthy. When things are going really well, you can afford dumb ideas. When things are going poorly, it turns out that you can't. And so it is very heartening to see Western countries turn away from the foolish, redistributionist, self-hating left-wing policies of people like Justin Trudeau and towards something better. That is a very good thing. And again, it's part of the new Trump world order that is being reshaped, not just by President Trump, but by a population across the world that is starting to realize how dumb left-wing policy has been. And President Trump coming into office is already reshaping the world. No one believes that Joe Biden is president of the United States at this point. This, for example, is why NATO chief Mark Rutte is now pushing Europe to increase aid to Ukraine. This, by the way, is something that Trump wants. Contrary to popular opinion, Trump does not want Ukraine to lose to Russia. What Trump would like is for America not to pay for an interminable war with no off-ramp. Ukraine is in Europe. Europe is a wealthy continent. And now NATO is finally saying, hey, maybe Europe should pay up.
I know spending more on defense means spending less on other priorities. But it is only a little less. On average, European countries easily spend up to a quarter of their national income on pensions, health, and social security systems.
I mean, these are criticisms that Donald Trump could be making of NATO countries. You guys are spending all of your money on welfare systems while we pay for your military. The answer is no, we are done with that. So the entire world is reshaping itself to the priorities of a Western population that it appears does not want to go down to the grave in silence. And that is a very, very good thing. Of course, President Trump is leading the way on that. Yesterday, he gave a bang-up press conference, a really excellent press conference, in which he talked about the sort of new energy in the system, the new hope that is broken out across the country in the aftermath of his election. As he says, the golden age of America has now begun.
But this will be the most exciting and successful period of reform and renewal in all of American history, maybe of global history. The golden age of America, I call it, it's begun. So it's the golden age of America, and that's what it's going to be. And we hope we don't have any intervening problems, because things happen like out of nowhere came the China virus. Out of nowhere came other things we don't want to have. You know, when I left, we had no wars. We had no problems. The Middle East was good. We did the Abraham Accords. We did things that nobody thought were even possible.
He is right about all of that. He points out as well that small business optimism has skyrocketed, which of course is true. As the co-owner of what used to be a small business and actually now is quite a large business, I can tell you the optimism in the system is quite real.
Small business optimism took a 41-point jump. 41 points. It went up 41 points. That's unheard of. And that's the biggest they think in recorded history, but they know at least a minimum of 39 years. So that's great.
Meanwhile, Trump says that they're going to implement a rapid prosperity agenda. And the notion, by the way, that it is very difficult to unleash the economy is just a lie. It's not true at all. Javier Milei in Argentina is showing this right now. When he came into office, there was all this talk about how Argentina was going to have an economic meltdown. Instead, economic resurgence has been the result of Javier Milei's tenure. He instituted incredibly harsh measures, cutting pretty much everywhere, restructuring many of the welfare programs, getting rid of an enormous amount of bureaucracy. And the answer is that Argentina has avoided recession. Well, Donald Trump is going to do the same thing with regard to the American economy. Here he was talking about his rapid prosperity agenda.
Starting on day one, we'll implement a rapid series of bold reforms to restore our nation to full prosperity. We're going to go full prosperity and to build the greatest economy the world has ever seen, just as we had just a short time ago. We had it in my term. We had the greatest economy that the world had seen. We were blowing away everybody. Our country was doubling up on China, doubling up on everybody, and everybody knows it.
He is right about all of this. He also did get, at this press conference, a verbal commitment to spend $100 billion in investment from the SoftBank CEO, a person named Masayoshi Son. And then Trump did the most Trumpy thing imaginable. On the spot, he said, why don't you make it $200 billion? It's just pretty fabulous.
I'm going to ask him right now, would you make it $200 billion instead of he can actually, believe it or not, he can actually afford to do that. Would you do that?
Well, my promise is 100, but, you know, he's now asking to do more. I think, you know, with your leadership, my partnership with you, with your support, I will try to make it happen.
That's good.
All right.
200. He'll make it happen. 200 billion investment.
He is a great negotiator.
He's a brilliant guy and did an unbelievable job, and the people of Japan and all over the world are very proud of him. They have tremendous respect for him. So when he does what he just did, and I would be surprised if it didn't go to 2. When you say you'll try, I know you'll do it.
I will really try. And I need your support, though.
You'll have my support.
All right.
You'll have our country's support.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you, Master, very much.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Trump is never somebody who's going to leave any scrap on the table in the middle of a negotiation. He is going to have a very successful presidency. And the reason he's going to have a very successful presidency is because now that President Trump has won, he has nothing left to prove. The only thing that he wants to prove is that he is a winner. As I've said before, Donald Trump's agenda is winning. That's his agenda. Everybody tries to spin a philosophy around Trump. He is an absolute pragmatist. All he cares about is the result. If the result is good for the country, he likes it. If the result is bad for the country and bad for his presidency, he doesn't like it. Which is why, in spite of all of the crazy tweet storms during his first term, he actually had a lot of success in the country, because in the end, Donald Trump's metric of success is, wait for it, success. It is not ideological consistency. It is not the love of the New York Times. It is simply winning, right? He's big on the winning. We'll get to what that means in terms of policy, because the rest of this press conference, again, it was sort of a masterclass in just pragmatic centrism. It's stuff that I think 70% of the American population agrees with, which is why he's experiencing a polling honeymoon right now. And this, as I said throughout the election cycle, was the dirty secret of the election. Donald Trump was the moderate in the election. Joe Biden is an extreme leftist. Kamala Harris was an extreme leftist. Donald Trump occupied the center on literally every position it was possible to occupy the center, from economics to foreign policy to abortion. And the same thing remains true right now. We'll get to that in just one second. First, Americans have spoken. We want secure borders, safe streets, and a thriving economy. We value merit over DEI, energy independence over Green New Deals, and strength without endless wars. On November 5th, we won an important victory, but this is no time to rest. The left is doubling down. They continue to attack the values and traditions that built this nation. That's why PragerU isn't resting. They're building on this hard-fought momentum and educating millions about America's founding principles and Judeo-Christian values, especially young people, like no one else can. And they need your help. Now through Christmas, generous PragerU donors have committed to triple matching every donation. Simply go to PragerU.com to donate. Your 100% tax-deductible gift will be tripled, having 3 times the impact. With your support, PragerU will continue reaching young people and gaining more ground against the forces that seek to destroy America. Now is the time for you to keep your foot on the gas. Stay committed, stay focused, help PragerU reach millions of young people. This is your moment to protect the vision of America as a land of freedom and opportunity. With your triple match support, you can ensure this victory lasts. Go to PragerU.com to donate today, and your gift will be tripled. Again, that's PragerU.com. We are sister companies with them effectively. They are wonderful people. You're not going to regret giving. Check them out, PragerU.com. Also, if you're still searching for that perfect gift, don't sweat it. Daily Wire Plus gift memberships are 40% off right now. Not for long. This isn't just a gift. It's a ticket to uncensored truth, unapologetic news, premium entertainment for the conservative in your life. With a Daily Wire Plus membership, they'll get a year of daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media with limited ads. Live breaking news that gives the full story. No agendas, just the facts. Access to investigative journalism exposing what the mainstream will not. An entertainment library packed with hit movies and documentaries like Am I Racist, along with can't-miss series like Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's The Gospels. Here's the best part to keep shopping stress-free. You pick the delivery date for the Daily Wire Plus gift membership, and we will handle the rest. 40% off Daily Wire Plus gift memberships. Head on over to dailywire.com right now. So President Trump obviously is pursuing a policy of pragmatic centrism. That means that he says obvious things. And because the left has lost its mind, those obvious things sound really obvious to people, like even more obvious than usual. So, for example, yesterday, Trump addressed the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO. And he said the thing that the vast majority of Americans actually agree with. Shooting people in the back on the streets of New York because you don't like how they run their business is bad. I know that in the online world, this is somehow considered justifiable, or it's supposed to spur a larger conversation about the healthcare system. Again, we can have those conversations literally any time. It seems to me the worst time to have those conversations is after a terrorist attack, the purpose of which is to generate left-wing conversations about these issues in this case. Here was Donald Trump saying the obvious.
I think it's a terrible thing. I think it's really terrible that some people seem to admire him, like him. And I was happy to see that it wasn't specific to this gentleman that was killed. It's just an overall sickness as opposed to a specific sickness. That was a terrible thing. It was cold-blooded, just a cold-blooded, horrible killing. And how people can like this guy is, that's a sickness, actually. That's really very bad, especially the way it was done. It was so bad, right in the back. And very bad, very thing like that. You can't believe that some people, and maybe it's fake news. I don't know. It's hard to believe that that can even be thought of.
Okay. Again, he is saying a perfectly obvious thing. Here's the thing about Trump. Now, Trump is actually not all that online, right? He actually doesn't spend a lot of time online like everybody else in the media industry. Donald Trump goes on Truth Social every once in a while in order to put out a piece of news, but it's not like he's monitoring X all day. So he's not caught up in the fever swamps nearly as much as many of the people who either surround him or who are on the left, which means that actually Donald Trump tends to touch grass a lot more often than a lot of the people who are both in his orbit and outside his orbit, basically anyone in politics. So he has good gut instincts on this stuff. Like, for example, it is bad to celebrate people who shoot people on the streets for political purposes. This should be obvious. This is a proposition with which most Americans agree. The same thing is true when it comes to foreign policy. So yesterday, members of the media idiotically asked Trump if he is going to engage in a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, just today, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, announced that Iran is basically lying and defying any sort of attempts to box them in on their nuclear program. So, it is unclear what's going to happen next. One thing is for certain, Israel is not going to sit still while Iran goes nuclear. So Trump is asked about a preemptive attack, and Trump gives the perfectly obvious answer. You morons, I'm not going to tell you if I'm going to do it. Like, that's not how foreign policy gets done, you idiots.
Are you entertaining the idea of preemptive strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities?
Against who?
Against Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, I can't tell you that.
Would you?
I mean, it's a wonderful question, but how can I? Am I going to do preemptive strikes. Why would I say that? Can you imagine if I said yes or no? You'd say, that was strange that he answered that way. Am I going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Is that a serious question? How could I answer a question like that?
Again, he's saying perfectly obvious things. Now, the media would have gotten an answer from Joe Biden in which he said, oh, yeah, we were Israel and preemptive strikes bad, you know. He would have immediately caved to the narrative. Trump's like, no, I'm not telling you what I'm going to do, which is a perfectly obvious response to this stuff. And it is refreshingly obvious at this point. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to stand behind his Secretary of Defense pick, Pete Hegseth, who I think is going to cruise to nomination. I think that Hegseth gets through. I think he should. I think Pete is a good pick for Secretary of Defense. He's out of the box and interesting, which is precisely why a lot of people hate him. Here was President Trump pushing Pete Hegseth.
And you know, Pete Hegseth gave up a lot because he was going big places in Fox, big places, a lot of money. And he didn't even hesitate. When I said, do you want to do this? He said, absolutely. I said, you know, if it doesn't work out, you'll never have the opportunity that you have right now in terms of the world of entertainment or business, whatever you want to call it. You'll never have that opportunity again. In fact, it could be just the opposite because it's nasty out there. He said, I don't care. I have to do it for my country. He gave up a tremendous amount. If this didn't work, it would be a tragedy. Because, but that's what he loves. He loves the military. I never talked to him about anything else. He'd talk about the military. He'd come to see me about a soldier that was unfairly treated, and could I help? That's the only thing I virtually ever talked to him about.
Good for Trump for not dumping Hegseth, despite whatever controversy is attendant on Pete's nomination. Meanwhile, President Trump, again, he's pursuing a course of pragmatic moderation on a wide variety of issues. So he has nominated RFK Jr., of course, very controversially, to head the Department of Health and Human Services. And he's asked by the media, you know, RFK Jr. has been very anti-vaccine. So what about things like the polio vaccine? Trump's like, are you crazy? I'm not getting rid of the polio vaccine. Like, that's been a good one.
On vaccines, do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
No, I want him to come back with a report as to what he thinks. We're going to find out a lot. We're doing two things. We're going to have tremendous cost savings will come out of this. That's a minimum. And we're also going to have, and I think, very serious discussions about certain things, whether it's pesticides. You know, Europe doesn't use pesticides, and yet they have a better mortality rate than we do. They don't use pesticides. In fact, they use it as an excuse not to take our farm product. We spend billions and billions of dollars on pesticides. And something bad's happening. Again, you take a look at autism today versus 20, 25 years ago, it's like not even believable. So we're going to have reports. No, nothing's going to happen very quickly. I think you're going to find that Bobby he's a very rational guy. I found him to be very rational. No, nothing, you're not going to lose the polio vaccine. That's not going to happen.
Again, what he is saying here is perfectly legitimate and perfectly pragmatic. And that is what you should expect from a Trump presidency. I know, contrary to popular opinion, Donald Trump is not going to come in like a bull in a china shop and simply start breaking every single thing, including the good things. He's going to break a lot of bad things, and he's going to maintain and expand the good things because he is not an ideological creature in general. Now, to me, listen, I have a very clear ideology. I think that ideology bears significant fruit. I think that the free market ideology of Javier Milei in Argentina, for example, is a purist ideology that has borne significant and great fruit. Donald Trump is not an ideologue. But here is the thing. If he is utilitarian, many of the things he does are going to be things that conservatives like because conservative solutions actually work. And meanwhile, speaking of pragmatism, Donald Trump is now reaching across to the other side of the aisle. He is possibly going to select Florida Representative Jared Moskowitz, a Democrat, to lead the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which again makes sense. Typically, administrations try to have somebody across the aisle to join the administration. Moskowitz is in the mix. Again, it's sort of a fascinating pick. Moskowitz has been relatively moderate because, again, he is from Florida, and Democrats from Florida tend not to be Democrats from New York, for example. However, since Trump won in November, Moskowitz has taken a notably friendlier approach to the incoming administration than some of his Democratic colleagues, according to CNN. He was quick to offer praise on social media when Trump tapped another Florida native, Susie Wiles, as chief of staff. And of course, Moskowitz knows her because he worked with her when she was in Florida politics. He's also the first Democrat to join the recently created Department of Governmental Efficiency Caucus in Congress. He represents Broward County. And this would not be the first time that he served in a Republican administration. Under Florida Governor DeSantis, Moskowitz had spent 2 years as the director of emergency management, so he'd be a perfect pick for this sort of thing. Also, on a practical level, it would probably be a good thing for President Trump to do this, considering that he has plucked a bunch of representatives from the Republican side of the aisle to serve in the administration. One way to sort of even the voting score is to pluck a couple of Democrats and put them inside the administration as well. So, whatever you expect from President Trump, do not expect extremism, because that is not what you are going to get. And that's what's going to shock so many people in the media. It's why their narrative on that one, too, is going to end up being false. Well, meanwhile, if you were thinking the left wasn't weird enough, well, I've got a weird one for you. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, who should not be on the Supreme Court. She is a terrible justice, and apparently she is the ultimate theater kid. According to the New York Post, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson briefly ditched the black robes and drama of the Supreme Court and made history with her Saturday night debut on Broadway in the musical & Juliet, a queer reimagining of William Shakespeare's classic Romeo and Juliet. Jackson, who once told members of the Senate that she couldn't define what a woman is because she's not a biologist, portrayed Queen Mab, described as a she-her character on a production poster during her brief Broadway stint on Saturday. She took the one-time walk-on role in the sold-out musical that had first premiered in 2019, which had 2 scenes crafted for her specifically to fulfill a lifelong dream of making it to Broadway. She went on CBS Mornings and explained, quote, "I just also think it's very important to remind people that justices are human beings, that we have dreams, and that we are public servants. I guess this moment reinforces for me that anything is possible. Here is her magnificent performance as she-her Queen Mab in queer Romeo and Juliet Broadway show & Juliet."
Female empowerment. Sick. We have a very special guest, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. I like it too. I think what I like about it is that I am having a very strongly negative reaction to it. Like I hate it. Which makes me think it must be brilliant. Got this feeling in my body. Can't stop the feeling. Got this feeling in my body. I can't stop the feeling. Wanna see you move your body. I did it. I made it to Broadway. Come on.
And not based on your talent, you didn't. My goodness. By the way, what exactly is that musical about? It explores the world of Romeo and Juliet, in which Juliet didn't kill herself after discovering her star-crossed lover Romeo dead from suicide at the end of the tragic play. Instead, Juliet seeks love again and heads to Paris with a non-binary character, only to later get tangled up in a love triangle. Wow, that is weird. That is super weird. And I'm just going to tell you that we were told by the left that J.D. Vance is weird, or that Amy Coney Barrett, because she has lots of kids, is weird. We've been told that Clarence Thomas is weird by the left. Okay, by the way, Clarence Thomas is so not weird that he and his wife go on like road trips across the country in an RV, and they go to just like classic Americana sites. That's how typically all-American Clarence Thomas is. Meanwhile, Ketanji Brown Jackson, her idea of a good time is, what if I go and debut for 3 lines on Broadway in a queer musical? And what in the world? In her memoir, Lovely One, Jackson reflected on how she applied to the Ivy League school, in part to fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming the first black female justice to take the Broadway stage. She went to Harvard University alongside actor Matt Damon. She wrote in the book, quote, "I, a Miami girl from a modest background with an unabashed love of theater, dreamed of one day ascending to the highest court in the land, and I had said so in one of my supplemental application essays." During a tour to promote her book, Jackson broke out into singing a few times and performed several lines from Schoolhouse Rock to demonstrate her unabashed love of theater. I don't think that she should be deciding what the Constitution means. I'm just going to put it out there. She can't define what a lady is, and she's a theater kid. So enough of this. It is bad. Alrighty, folks, coming up, we're going to get into a controversial strike by Ukraine against a senior Russian general in Moscow. If you're not a member, become a member, use code Shapiro, check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.